we are going to balance our emotions, there are only two things that we are dealing with. One is changing perceptions. The other is releasing emotions. We are only dealing with changing perceptions now. It is not that I am trying, see, very often in a lot of self-help courses, they ask you to replace one perception with another perception. You are always taught to think positively, change your, create your, shift your weakness into success or failures into success or something like that, But that is not what we are talking about here. I don't want you to create positive stories about your crisis. No. I am not asking you to hold on to a perception, a new perception saying every suffering is a blessing in disguise. All these suffering is shaping you for your destiny, or it is molding your character. All this is true, but we are not trying to hold on to a lofty perception now. I am not trying to replace a mundane perception with a principled perception. No. I am only asking you to empty these stories out. No matter what this perception is, end of the day, a perception is only a perception. It is not the truth. It's just a mere perception. It's just a way of seeing things. Something happened. That is true. Something emotional could have happened. Something bitter could have happened. It's a fact. But then, everything else that you've built around it is only a perception. Everything else that we have woven around it is only an assumption. It could be the most obvious assumption, the most obvious perception, but yet, end of the day, a story is only a story. It is only how you are seeing it. If I made 10 other people see the same thing, they would definitely see it differently. If I have 10 different versions of the same event, what do you call it? Do you call it a story, or do you call it the truth? It's only a story. There are so many reasons why we make this story. There are so many things we gain from the story. There are so many things we lose from the stories that we create. But we are not going into all that. That is for another day. That's for another class. We'll have to go into all types of conditioning for that. But then, today we are only trying to help you change your perception. The perception that is surrounding your emotional distress. I'm not when I say changing perception, I'm not asking you to replace it with another perception. I'm just asking you to realize it is merely just my perception. The moment you see, there's a difference between understanding what I'm telling right now and seeing, being aware that it is just your perception. The moment you are aware that it is merely your perception, the intensity with which you attach yourself to it would no longer be there. You would detach yourself from that same story. You would detach yourself from that same incident. Because all that emotional significance that you've attached to it is based upon your perception. The moment you just see it as your perception, it's like you're taking a back seat. You're no longer emotionally stuck to it. It is your perceptions, your stories, which doesn't allow you to release your emotions. You cannot go to the second stage if you have not freed yourself on the first stage. I have been teaching for the last 16 years, and I tell you, people can share about their emotional distress. Even after 10 years, even after 20 years, they can relate to it as though it happened yesterday. We are speaking about the same issues that you had with your parents from your childhood. We are speaking about the same relationship breakups. We are speaking about the same hurts in friendships, being exploited. We are talking about the same crisis. We are talking about the same situation for so long. And we are capable of speaking about this at length 10 years from now too. But the question is, how long are we going to hold on to these emotions? How much importance are you going to give to them? And when I'm saying this, I'm not making little of your suffering, no. Just because you heal your emotions and you move on doesn't mean that you have made your suffering any less. I mean, that you have ridiculed your suffering or you have made little of your suffering. No. It's still important. It was still very traumatic and big. Yes, we accept it. We respect it. But then, so what? We'll have to make progress. We'll have to grow. That is what we spoke in the beginning of the session. People have to grow. That is how you validate your progress. All your practices, all your spirituality, it has to reflect on how you choose to relate to your daily challenges, how you choose to relate to your everyday situations and challenges of your life. Not just being stuck with the same repeated responses. There is so much more to life. I understand it's your favorite movie, so you keep showing it on the projector, on the screen all the time. But then, if you're done with it, there is some other movie to be seen. That is all I'm saying. And it does not happen by replacing your emotions, your perceptions. A lot of self-help work is based upon, changing your fear, replacing it with courage. They'll tell you to stand in front of the mirror. If you're very afraid, they'll tell you to look into the mirror and say, I'm the most bravest person, I'm the most courageous person. No, please don't do that. Because every time you say that, something inside you will say, no, you're not. So, instead of your courage being strengthened, your fear would get reinstated. Because somebody is saying, no, you're not, every day in front of the mirror. On the other hand, the first step towards courage is to look into that mirror, look into your eyes and tell yourself, I am afraid. Because that is the fact, that is the truth. That is the first step of courage, to confront your fear. What can be more courageous than that? That is the beginning of a journey then. Not living in denial, not trying to replace it with the opposite. Yes, all these incantations and all that will definitely help, affirmation statements that you make will help. I'm not saying it is wrong. You do it after you've conquered and release your emotions. Get rid of that fear and then program yourself. Once you've confronted your fear, you've released your fear, then look into the mirror and say, I am the most courageous person, because that's a fact, it's truth. That would get strengthened. All affirmations will work like magic then. So I'm not against affirmations, but it's where you put your affirmations. Whether you're putting the cart before the horse or behind the horse. So once you see that your perceptions are just perceptions, then that is when you move on to the next stage. You're confronted with the real emotion, not the stories, because it's trivial now. After all, I can, to the end of days, I can keep talking about my stories. You see, it's no longer important. So you take a step back and you confront your emotion. Once you get in touch with your emotion, it is easy to release emotions. People always think, I don't want to confront my emotions because I can be stuck with it forever. No. That is yet another assumption. That's another story. That's for another day. The fact is, any sensory experience in life is only temporary. You know that, isn't it? Can you hold on to any sensation a second longer? Can you? It could be, eating a beautiful scoop of ice cream or a nice bar of chocolate, or climbing on going on a beautiful hike, climbing on a mountain and then seeing a spectacular view. How long can you hold on to this beautiful experience or this sensation? How long? Can you sustain it a minute longer? You get on to this beautiful mountain, you hike it, and then you look at this splendid view, and then the first couple of minutes you are in the oohs and ahs of it. Wow, this is how beautiful it is. Then you take pictures, then you start putting it on Facebook, if you had the GPRS there. And after the first 10 minutes, that's it. It's just a backdrop. It's just going to be the wallpaper in your desktop, that's it. You're not looking at the map, okay, where else can I go now? It is not there a minute longer, isn't it? Same way, unpleasant experiences are also momentary. That is the beauty. The only thing is, we assume that these unpleasant experiences are here to stay, and hence we are constantly running away from it, we are constantly fighting it. But if you allowed those emotions to come and impact you, to hit you, allowed yourself to become vulnerable to it. I'm using the word vulnerable here as a virtue. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a virtue. If you can just be vulnerable enough to experience that emotion, then like a flu or a cold, it just runs its course, that's it. It comes, it impacts you, it takes a toll, it's gone. You allowed it to rest. It, like a wave, it arises, and like a wave, it ceases again. But if we do not confront it, we keep getting stuck with the same repeated emotions, and we create a family of other emotions. We saw how we created those emotions too. So releasing this emotion would take you no longer than 10 minutes. And I say 10 minutes because you're a beginner. If you've done it twice, it takes you less than 5 minutes. It's not going to take forever. Because people always say, okay, I understand, I'll do this when I go back, when I go back home, when I have the time. You don't need time. You can do it now. You can do it here. Because if you can do it here, if you can do it now, when you step out of the door, you will go as a different person. Because you're taking back home something that is so important and so vital, which can change the way you feel, which can change the way you relate, which can change the way your personality is structured. It can change everything about you. Because you're no longer afraid of being hurt. I'm not saying you're going to become a daredevil and then pull up some stunts, no. But then you don't have to live in fear of getting hurt. I'll tell you, it'll allow you to be yourself. What it is to be yourself is completely different. There cannot be anything more empowering than that. The power of being yourself. So for that, releasing these emotions is a huge step. And that is what you're going to do now. You ready for it? Good. So I'm just going to teach you the step and then I'm going to make you do it. And though all of you are going to do it together, each one will process your own journey as you're doing it. But the steps involved are the same. So the only principle that you'll have to know is anything pushed to the extreme, the opposite would emerge. It's a principle in nature. Fear, you push it to the extreme, go to the depths of fear. What is the opposite of fear? Courage or fearlessness. That is something that you don't seek. It is something that just surfaces just because you got rid of all that fear. That is the only thing we are going to do. Any sensory experience is only temporary. You can't hold on to it a minute longer. You can't hold on to it a second longer. So confront it. It will affect you. Allow those emotions to surface. When you pay attention to that emotion, when you become vulnerable and tell yourself, I'm going to allow myself to suffer this. And you're doing that because you know it's temporary. Because if you're going to be stuck with it, I'm sure nobody is going to volunteer to do that. Because it's temporary, so let me see, how much can it hurt? How long can it hurt? So take that into confidence and allow it to hurt you. When you stay with your emotion, when you pay attention to that emotion, because that is the fact, the mind will tell you so many stories. It will try to blame someone, it will try to blame yourself, it will blame somebody else, it will call names, it will give reasons. All that is stories. We are not interested in it, not today. Bring your awareness. Awareness is the only tool that you're going to have in this journey. Awareness is like a beam of light, a flash of light that you are holding. What does a beam of light do? It helps you to see things clearly. It does not help you to find anything. Can light help you to find something that is not there? We already saw with the old man's story. It can only help you to see whatever is here. If it's here, you see it. If it's not here, you see that it's not here. That is also seeing something, no? Awareness is the only thing you will need in this journey, the only tool that you will need in this journey, and just help you to see the fact. The fact is you're hurting. Stay with that hurt. Let those emotions surface. You feel like crying, it's okay. You don't have to worry. You're not being filmed. And the person next to you is also keeping his eyes closed. So nobody's watching you. But if you feel like crying, cry. If you feel like shouting, you can shout. Or if you don't feel like doing anything, but just suffer internally, do that also. Whatever way you normally do it. But as you stay with it, instead of fighting it, as you allow it to be, within minutes you will see that it becomes physical. All emotions are sourced in your body, it's physical. Physically you would feel a pain in your chest, or a lump in your throat, or pain on your forehead, or in your stomach. You will see that being manifested somewhere. Immediately shift your awareness to that part of your body where it hurts or where it is uncomfortable. Put your hand on that part of the body where it's hurting, so that it will help you to focus there. And just keep your awareness, keep your attention on that part of the body. In just a few minutes you will see that this sensation becomes a little intense and suddenly releases. It is no longer there. You would feel a sense of silence and calmness and maybe even bliss once it is gone, because you have released what we call as a set of emotions. You have released some negative energy from you, and that's the reason why you feel nice and warm and good about yourself. And this entire journey happens in less than 10 minutes.